Rachel Service here, the CEO of Happiness Concierge and the author of There Has to Be More, the Essential Guide to Personal Growth. In this video, we will be bringing your I Want list to life. We'll be prioritizing and we'll be adding some healthy accountability. Let's dive in. If you're following along with the Essential Guide to Personal Growth, we're here on page 106. If you're here with the Essential Workbook to Essential Growth, we are on page 65. Now, you would have done your I Want list in the previous section, and now it's about turning what you want into what am I going to do first? What we're doing here is prioritizing to manage your expectations, helping you plan ahead, and then adding some healthy accountability that resonates with your authentic style of learning and doing and taking action, and of course, celebrating along the way. So I want you to think about, cast your mind back to your I Want list, and you might have done one I Want list. You might have done a few if you're like me. And just take a look at that list and ask yourself, what of this list could be an easy win? The reason we focus on easy wins at Happiness Concierge is that when we take small steps of action, it helps build our momentum and thereby our confidence. So as you look through your I Want list, it might be in some of your short-term goals or it might be in some of your longer-term goals. What's a small, easy win that you can take to make action? The next question to ask is, which out of these are important, which are urgent, and which you might shelve for later? Now, if you're following along at the book, there's a wonderful table 3 on page 107, and in the workbook guide that is on page 66. And ask yourself, which of your I Want list are easy wins, which are most important to your well-being, which need to happen to lighten the load or help you take progress towards that, and which you can shelve for later. And you might be thinking to yourself, Rach, why would I shelve something for later? I've just done all this work around goals and setting myself up for success. Well, good point. The reason I like to help people prioritize and also decide what they're not going to do is because it helps lower the cognitive load, and B, it's really empowering, saying, here's what I'm not going to focus on. You would know in the past we've talked about non-negotiables for success, elements I'm clear I'm walking away from and what I'm keen to move towards. And when we actually focus on what we're going to shelve for later, it helps free us up to make greater steps to success. So as you go through this video or you're listening along or you're in the book or the workbook, have a think about what could I shelve for later, e.g. it's important, but you might want to do it later, and what is something that you can get an easy win for now. Now, when we talk about what would stop you from succeeding, you might think, what? Why would I talk about what will stop me from succeeding? Well, on working with thousands and countless of clients over the years, I find having a robust, emotionally honest conversation with ourselves earlier on helps lower the pressure to have it all together, do it right, be perfect, execute flawlessly, and have a very honest conversation of what will get in the way. Because here's the thing. Life will get in the way, time will get in the way, relationships will get in the way, bank accounts will get in the way, everything will get in the way. It's about focusing what we've talked about, which is our internal locus of control, e.g. what we can control, and then clarifying what might get in our way so we can focus on A, either clarifying that in our relationship to that, or B, creating a plan to move around it, or as they say about emotions, move through them. So you'll be on page 67 if you're in your workbook, and I'm here on let me have a look in the Essential Guide. I'm here on page 109. And, when we think about what could limit our success, there are so many things. There could be physical elements. There could be our relationship to ourselves. There could be our self-efficacy, how much we believe we can do a great job. Might be our self-belief and our relationship with what we think is possible. Might be our skills, might be our environment, and might indeed even be our capacity, right? There are so many hours in the day, right? And then, of course, the need for additional support. So when we look through the self-reflection exercise, just, have a think about the following questions. So you've done your I Want list, you've gone through a prioritization process, and now have a think about the following prompters. Let's take a look. Outline what you perceive to be obstacles, if any, to achieving your I want list. You might have populated these in the earlier section prior, so referring to that list is great too. What do you perceive as obstacles? Examples might include, I really want to write a book, but there are only so many hours in the day. Or an obstacle might be, I'd love to move from, say, project management into a creative role. The obstacle for me is skill. I haven't had any experience or exposure in that area. Or it might be, I'm looking to retire and I'm looking for a board position or a not-for-profit position to contribute to society or my community and or my faith. And I actually don't know where to start. So that's a very real barrier, right? What I find is so empowering is writing out what we don't know and then making a plan for what we do know and how we can apply our problem skills from there. Problem solving skills, I should say. Now, as you look through the list of what could stop you, and you might have a very small list, no list, or a very long list, here's the next prompter in your workbook and indeed your guide. Which of the above are within your control? Which are within your control? Which can you positively influence? What can you shift the dial on? So as an example, when I started Happiness Concierge, I wanted to create a company and I had $300 in my bank account. What of that could I control? All I could control was the amount of time that I put into the business, the amount of money I saved, the amount of side jobs I got on the side. I worked in a cafe, I did freelancing, I did contracting to pay the bills as I built the business and grow the bank account and enable me to outsource. So that was within my control. What was out of my control? A global pandemic, how the market might respond, how others might respond to my messaging. The only thing I could control was indeed how I chose to proceed. So that was something within my control. So putting yourself in your own shoes, of course, if let's say one of your obstacles or perceived obstacles is, I don't have any experience in this area, what's within your control? Well, it's completely within your control to go out there and get some experience, to offer to volunteer, get some case studies, get some work. It's completely within your control to reach out to someone and say, I'm looking to get into creative work. Could I ask you 2 questions on how you got to the job that you have today? It's completely within your control to have a conversation with your partner to say, my job, I don't feel like I'm growing in my job. Can I rehearse a conversation with you so I can take that to my manager to see what else is possible? That is within your control. And therefore, the other question we want to ask is, what is out of our control? What's out of your control? And therefore requires you to release attachment. Release attachment. So it's so interesting when we get overloaded, overwhelmed, when we get busy, when we get stressed, our brains instinctively want to focus on what we cannot control, and that's just our brains keeping us safe, as we've discussed prior. The most powerful thing we can do is to really address what we can control and what we can't control. And then within that lies a process of letting go of what we can't control, whether it's the external factors, whether it's what other people think, whether it's how good our work might be. We can't control how others respond to our scenario. We can only control how we choose, and everything is a choice. Every action is a choice, how we choose to respond, think, and follow on from that. So as you look at your list, which of the above are you willing to compromise on or approach differently? So when you look at things you can control and you can't, just have a think through that list. Now put your other problem-solving hat on, which is, what are you willing to compromise on or not? So earlier in the process of the growth cycle, I asked you a question, which is, what does success look like to you? And what is your non-negotiables for success? And what are you a little bit flexible on? It's a great tool for negotiations and just simply clarifying what your needs are in any conversation, right? Here's what I need to succeed. Here is where I'm probably a bit flexible and not so attached to. So what are you willing to compromise on in your I want list? And what are you not willing to compromise on? Asking ourselves what we're not willing to compromise on helps us know what our deal breakers are. It helps us know where we sit in a conversation or in a dynamic. So what we're not willing to compromise on, go back to your I want list and what you were looking at prioritizing and saying, what am I going to prioritize? What is within my control? And what am I willing to not compromise on. These are your deal breakers, and indeed, these become your priorities. Yeah. So we have just prioritized your I want list by going through your I want list, urgent, important, shelf for later, and easy wins. We're then asked a question, which is to say, which of these are in my control? Which am I flexible on and within my control? And what my obstacles might be? Have a really rigorous discussion with yourself about are these real obstacles or are these perceived obstacles, right? So based on that thought process, you'll find yourself moving to a linear step, which is on page 70 of the workbook. And I'm opening my guide here. I'm opening my guide to page 111, which is a self-reflection exercise around what goal would you like to experience, achieve first, and by when. And we have 3 categories here. We have what's the easy win. And again, I'm bringing the easy win home. Yes, I'm bringing the important and I'm bringing the non-negotiable. Now, some people like me are motivated by I'm trying to think of the word. Motivated by a milestone, right? So for me, I'm motivated by, I wanted to do this book by the time I was 40, so I've done that. And of course, another example would be by the time I retire, I want to have published a certain amount of things. You know, some people might have a milestone of by the time I get a job, by the time I get a salary, by the time it's so-and-so's birthday, by the time I have my first child. It's completely up to you in terms of that. Think about what that might look like. And indeed, if you're more of a linear person and you like to think about it in time slots, you might think, when will I achieve what's on my I want list that I can control, that is my non-negotiable? This is how we bind our goals into real action. When will I do that? Is it today? Is it this week, this month? What's important and what needs to be prioritized? So as you can see, I've asked you to go expansive with your I want list. And then I've just asked you, what's your non-negotiable? What could be an easy win and what is within your control? Now we prioritize that into the following sections. So take your time with it. And what I would say is triple the amount of time doing something new will take you. Why? Because we need to expand, we need to go into our learning zone, and we need to recover afterwards. So once we know how to do something, it goes into our happy comfort zone. It becomes second nature. It becomes kind of easy breezy, beautiful, right? Now, when something is new, we are expanding. We are growing. We're really using all our cognitive energy. So, we need to give ourselves chances to fail privately, right? Fail consistently, fail early. So, be kind to yourself and give yourself 3 times the amount of time that you might instinctively want to. And what I've noticed with my clients, and indeed myself, is that we want to do it all. We'll do all our I want list as soon as we can, right? Well, pardon me. Interestingly, I found what works best is actually lowering our expectations while keeping our standards high. You might be thinking, excuse me, Rachel, are you mad lowering my expectations? Well, yes, but bear with me. There's a reason for that. In countless clients I've worked with, pardon me, we've talked about lowering our expectations and what's possible while keeping our standards high. And what that does is it lowers our anxiety. It gives us freedom to fail regularly, and then it enables us to take sensible steps of action. Not all change needs to be dramatic or epic or large or transformative. It can be small steps over time we take to build a life and work and society that indeed serves us. Now let's talk about adding accountability. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm deadline driven. I love a deadline and I love a bit of social accountability, right? So when we talk about accountability, I've listed here in the workbook and indeed the guide a myriad of ways that you might like to keep accountable. So for example, you might be deadline driven, you might crave social support, you might love positive reinforcement, you might like investing time, and of course you might cultivate a network of doers. So as you go through this list of accountability, have a think about, what your motivation for being accountable might be and how you might infuse that into your I want list. And in your workbook, I've included quite a few notes and spaces for you to include that. And just, test it out as you go. So many people on my team, they love that social support and checking in early, accompanied with a deadline. Other people in my friend group, they're extroverts. They love to do things as a group. And interestingly, one study found that in a weight loss project, people were 95% more likely to complete the entire program when they were in a group. So while that might not be top of mind for you, it's more about the amount that social inclusion can help us achieve our goals. There's no wrong way to do it. At the end of the day, it's really about bringing you back to that people audit I mentioned earlier, which is about how can we cultivate a network of people who do what they say they will do in their own pursuit of success in order to mirror our belief and value system that anything and everything is possible. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful. And as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or one of my happiness concierges at hello@happinessconcierge.com. See you soon and have fun.